Good afternoon. This is Jose Tiburcio S. Canlas. My study is entitled Sustainable Development, a Critical Review of Literature. I start with the objectives of the study. The first objective is to examine the concept of sustainable development, the definitions, the pillars, goals, relationships, and implications. Number two objective is to examine the arguments related to complementarities and synergies as well as trade-offs and tensions. Here now is the review of my related literature. I start with the definitions given to sustainable development. The most popular of the definitions of sustainable development is that of Brundtland or the World Commission on Environment and Development. It refers to sustainable development as that development that meets the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Subsequent definitions of sustainable development were built from this definition of sustainable development. Now, giving emphasis on the social aspect in the definition of sustainable development, another definition is the improvement in human life standard within the carrying ability of supporting ecosystems. Sustainable development was also defined as a development strategy or a process. And this definition has expanded the scope of sustainable development to include the management of not only natural and human resources, but also financial and physical assets for growing the wealth and improving the well-being. Now we go to the pillars of sustainability, and these are economic, social, and environmental. We begin with economic sustainability. It refers to the production system that meets the current consumption levels without compromising future demands. Traditionally, the economists would assume that there is inevitable economic growth and that there is unlimited supply of natural resources. They would also assume that technological advancement would accompany economic growth. Now, under economic sustainability, there is a re-evaluation of this economic assumption, and that natural resources are not limitless, and some are not renewable and cannot be replenished. Thus, economic sustainability demands the most equitable and fiscally sound decisions and actions that consider the other aspects of sustainability. Now we go to social sustainability. The definition given to it is that it includes the continued fulfillment of basic human needs. Examples are food, water, and shelter, as well as the higher level social and cultural needs. Examples are education, employment, security, recreation, and freedom. This definition of social sustainability centers on the individual and not on groups, not on nations. Now, other definitions of social sustainability were expanded to include not only the development of people, but also of their communities and cultures. Thus, social sustainability includes gender equality, human rights, public participation, and the rule of law. The last pillar of sustainability is environmental sustainability. It centers on natural biological processes and the continued productivity and functioning of ecosystems. Now, environmental sustainability is about how the natural environment remains productive and resilient to be able to support human life. It also recognizes that there are limitations in the natural environment's source capacities and sink capacities. Examples of source capacities are materials for inputs such as water, food, air, and energy. And examples of sink capacities are the outputs and waste that are absorbed by the natural environment. Now we go to sustainable development goals. The Sustainable Development Goals, together with the Millennium Development Goals, were translated from the concerns for responsible use of natural environment. So the Sustainable Development Goals were introduced to continue with the development agenda of the Millennium Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals introduced 17 goals, and they were referred to as the Agenda 2030. The objective is to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all. There are 5 underlying themes of Agenda 2030, and these are people, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnerships. The objectives and targets of Sustainable Development Goals are said to be interdependent but interlinked. And as such, we have complementarities and synergies. That means addressing one goal can at the same time address some other goals. Example, like if you address the climate change, you can help address the problems on health, security, energy, and diversity. Another one would be the trade-offs and tensions. An example, if trees in forests are cut down to increase agricultural production for food security, then it is possible that biodiversity will suffer. Another example is that switching food crops to biofuel production to address energy security will threaten food security. Now, what needs to be done? The best thing to do is to achieve a balance between high levels of economic growth and the protection and preservation of environment. Now we go to the synthesis. I say that most of the definitions of sustainable development were built from the definition of Brundtland. And most of these definitions imply both intra-generational equity and intergenerational equity. As a development process, sustainable development addresses the challenges confronting human beings and their communities, such as poverty, inequality, and the destruction of natural resources. Now, the ultimate objective of sustainable development is to attain a balance among economic, social, and environmental sustainability, hence making them the pillars of sustainable development. Sustainable development requires cooperation and coordination among private sectors, governments, and other stakeholders to manage the complementarities and synergies. Also, the trade-offs and tensions among the economic, social, and environmental dimensions. Now we go to research gaps and recommended research. As a starting point, it is important to analyze the existing literature in order to come up with standard definitions of terminologies which are being used interchangeably in the literature. Examples of these are sustainability and sustainable development, environmental sustainability, and ecological sustainability. Now, another thing to consider would be the 3 pillars of sustainable development, which are social, economic, and environmental. They are not clearly reconciled with the 5 major themes encompassed by the UN's Agenda 2030, which are people, planet, peace, prosperity, and partnerships. And lastly, different countries have different realities. They have different levels of development, capacities, and policies and priorities. Now, the existing literature is still deficient as to country-specific approach in applying and monitoring the sustainable development goals of different countries with different realities. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.